Sometimes when you've been on the road for a while and everything is starting to look the same out of the windshield, well, maybe you need a little bump on the radio to something entirely different than what you've been listening to. Right? So you've been listening to now what they call a lot of classic hits rock, right? Perhaps a song or two of some good old 60s Motown or even 50s doo-wop will give you that little bump you need. And no doubt some of you think that today's song in our On the Road with Jesus playlist is weird and strange even for me, all right? But it's the 1980s pop classic by the queen of pop herself, Madonna. And if you really can't stand Madonna on the playlist, well then Money by Pink Floyd will do just as well for you this week. Now actually Madonna didn't write this song or produce it on her record. It was written by Peter Brown, who had some modest solo success, which means way more success than you or I can imagine, there on the dance charts, and it was produced by mega hitmaker Nile Rodgers. You can look both of them up later. And admittedly, a lot of folks missed the irony and the satire of the song Material Girl, thinking it was to be taken seriously as, I don't know, sort of a yuppie anthem for all those baby boomers living their best life now in those boom years following President Reagan's election. Now, ever having a nose for building up attention, Madonna had this to say about the song at the time. I'm very career-oriented. You're attracted to people who are ambitious that way too, like in the song Material Girl. You're attracted to men who have material things because that's what pays the rent and buys you furs. That's the security. That lasts longer than emotions. That's the security. That lasts longer than the emotions. Did you hear that? That's why Material Girl got picked for our playlist. And speaking of our playlist, just remember what's been going on in our preaching series we've called On the Road. We began with the story of how Jesus had set his face to go to Jerusalem, where his innocent suffering and death on the cross awaited him. He was single-mindedly focused on his mission to bring God's deliverance out to every corner of the world. So to do that, Jesus crosses any boundaries to expand the reach of God's reign, and he carries the gospel to those who are overlooked and forgotten. And so Jesus invites us to join him out there on the road, carrying his good news with us wherever we travel in everyday life. Because it's summertime, time of vacations and road trips, even if they're only for a day, well, we thought we could have a little fun with the sermon titles, taking them from some well-known classic hits, making us a brief playlist to take with us to remind us how to be on the road with Jesus. And your green study and share inserts has the whole list there for you in number 3, even filling in those couple Sundays we had a guest preacher. We began there with Tom Petty, then we had Queen, the Beatles, more Tom Petty, the Temptations. Today we'll wrap up with Madonna, or if you prefer, Pink Floyd. And you can catch all those songs in a playlist already ready to go, videos of them, on our YouTube channel, on St. Peter's YouTube channel. You can get there from the website. Just ask your grandkids for help. All right? Now, when we introduced the gospel reading during our welcome this morning, I rephrased it as the man who built a bigger barn dominium. And I think that's a fair bridge between then and now. I see the guy in the Bible certainly didn't have a 401k. And yet our homes today represent our single largest asset for the average person. I think all of you know what a barn dominium is around here, right? It's one of those very fancy homes built to look like a metal pole barn, right? Granite countertops, premium fixtures, all that kind of stuff in there, but it looks like a barn. Sometimes even making one continuous building from the living spaces to the workshop, the garage, the patio, and more. And ever since our middle-class culture moved out to the suburbs following World War II, we have been in an arms race with the neighbors to keep up with the Joneses. No, to acquire more and better stuff than the Joneses. Indeed, just when I think, man, the local self-storage market must be saturated. Well, another one goes up. to store more stuff that we don't want, but we also don't want to get rid of. Strange. See, in our culture, by every measure, we just keep buying more stuff at any price because, hey, if we don't, someone else will. In fact, this is part of the price inflation recipe we've experienced of late. We have more stuff than ever, and we are unhappier than ever, too. And no amount of cheerful pop music irony seems to help. Oh, Pastor, that's not me. Well, maybe for you it's like the elderly lady I used to visit who had every ceramic angel that Hallmark ever made on every flat surface in her house. Right? And how many of us, I won't make you raise your hand, how many of us own more clothes than we can wear? More books than we can read? More guns than we can shoot? Right? Even those safe queens, right? Now, I'm guilty on all counts. Right? So the point here isn't our stuff per se. It's that age-old question. Do you own your stuff, or does your stuff own you? Right? That's the unfortunate situation of the man in Jesus' parable today. His goods own his soul, just like he says in verse 19. I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry. So Jesus gives us a contrast between being rich toward ourselves and being rich toward God. Again, if you look on your little green study and share inserts, number 2 will take you deeper here as to what's going on. But a quote from the Sermon on the Mount will suffice. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust consume, where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust consumes, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Hearts follow treasure, not the other way around. And so Jesus names our consumer material struggle. We believe the lie that we are free because we have so many choices in shopping and spending money. Instead, the truth is that our hearts and souls are enslaved, and we cannot free ourselves. Our second reading from Colossians chapter 3 helps us out. So if you have been raised with Christ, seek the things that are above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind on things that are above, not on things that are on earth. For you have died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, is revealed, then you will also be revealed with him in glory. Neither St. Paul nor Jesus is so foolish to think that we can live life without any stuff. Right? That's not on the table. And neither is a so-called vow of poverty, which means you don't have any personal possessions beyond like the clothes on your back. Some people do that. That's not expected of the average Joe. Listen again to what we hear in Colossians. If you have been raised with Christ, if you have been raised, and of course you have been raised with Christ if you are baptized, then seek the things that are above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. And what might those things be? Well, how about for starters, forgiveness and life and salvation, grace, mercy, and love. Immaterial things? Yeah, sure they are. But things that really exist here and now? Absolutely. And are they secure through all circumstances of life and death? Without a doubt. Do they change the world more than stuff? Our human condition of sin, death, and evil can be described in many ways. Perhaps the best one is as a lack, an absence, a void, what some have called a God-shaped hole in each one of us that we try to fill with anything else. Especially in our culture, we try to fill it with our consumer choices and lifestyles. Don't forget that the human condition is just that, common to every single human being. And so if you have been raised with Christ, we hear, meaning that if Jesus has poured out his life on the cross for you, if he has been raised from the dead for you, if Jesus' own forgiveness, life, and salvation have filled you and raised you, again, the if is rhetorical, as in, of course it's true, a sure thing that God has done this for you. We certainly didn't do it for ourselves. Last time I checked, you couldn't fill a hole with a hole, just digs a bigger one. You try it when you get home if you don't believe me. Having that God-shaped hole filled for us with the very life of the eternal Son of God raises us up from starting at our belly buttons, worried about us, to looking toward heaven above. And with our eyes up, we can see beyond our material needs. And more importantly today, our material wants. Right? We can see beyond those things. One, to see the road that we're walking down in everyday life, the narrow way as Jesus calls it. And two, to see God's kingdom and Jesus' mission expanding all the way out to the horizon, undeterred by the stuff and the contradictions and the lies of our everyday lives, and yet ministering to our everyday lives and inviting us to join Jesus' mission out on the road with him. Colossians, like Romans, tells us the fundamental change in our minds, the way we look at the world, a renewal for them that comes when they are filled up and overflowing, covered by Jesus Christ. The lies of our lifestyle treasures, whether they be objects and furnishings, land and cattle and mineral rights, or experiences and excursions, are taken off like filthy clothes. And instead, Jesus is wrapped around us like the richest royal garment, hiding us from the prying, accusing, shaming, blaming eyes of the dog-eat-dog, rat race, hamster wheel, stairway to heaven, corporate ladder world around us. See, that ladder doesn't go to the top. And so Jesus comes down to us to bring us with him as if we are his own beloved possessions, giving us the riches of his kingdom starting on the very day that we're baptized. Experience has made me rich, sings Madonna in her hit Material Girl. In the song, she means that she's learned how to work the system, as they say, to increase her material standing, to rise a little higher up that corporate ladder, that stairway to heaven. However, maybe those words should be true for us, but in a different way. That the experience of Jesus makes us rich toward God. See, the material girl thinks, according to the lie, that storing up treasures for oneself makes one rich. For us, for the beloved, baptized, believing body of Christ, we know the truth. The rich one can give things away because they already have more than enough. Yes, of course. Of course we give our material treasures to those who need them and to further God's kingdom, to make sure that the people who will use them have them, right? Especially through our offerings. And we also give life, forgiveness, mercy, love, as we travel the road of everyday life with Jesus. Those are things that are always in short supply around us, but things that we can surely never run out of. And they surely can change the world more than stuff. If you want to see more of those riches in life, then give them away from your own life. God simply won't let you run out. In fact, we might even say how you get more of them is by giving more of them away. Amen.